Hello and welcome to another episode of Top Deck, the series where we take a look at some of the leading TCG deck lists. So this time we have Ron's list, which took first place at the Huddersfield regional, one of the first regionals of this season, and probably one of the biggest actually that has come up so far, I guess, besides probably Portsmouth. And he took Altergeist to this event, and actually there are 0 changes that have to be made to this list following the ban list. And with it, he went 7-0. So let's run through the list of siding strategy, and then we'll get some comments on him in the rounds as well. So we start off with 1 Conqueror, triple Marionetta, triple Melisseek, triple Multi-Faker, and double Silkatus. This is the very standard monster lineup for the deck now. Triple Ash Blossom, double Ghost Bell, and double Ghost Ogre. This is probably a little bit less typical. But it does kind of deal with Caught by the Grave and a few other things as well, so Ghost Bell seems pretty reasonable within the deck, and Ogre and Ash are probably the most generic, versatile hand traps currently available. Then Triple Desires and Triple Duality. Again, this is not the typical form for this deck. Generally people cut down on these numbers because they don't want to be bricking on monsters, but I believe he wanted some way to sort of modulate hands a little bit better. Triple Secret Village, 1 Manifestation, triple Protocol, a bit more unusual that one, 1 Imperial Order, triple Impermanence, triple Spoofing, and 1 Judgment. No rivalries in here. I think he considered that Secret Village was enough of a floodgate alongside the hand traps in order to just stop people from playing the game. Within the extra deck we have Alistair the Invoker of Madness, double Hextia, 1 Prime Banshee, 1 Boral Sword, 1 Clara and Rushka, Nightmare Phoenix, Unicorn, Linkaribo, Ningirsu, then Sky Strikers, Hayate, Kagari, and Shizuku, 1 Topologic Bomber Dragon, and 1 Triple Burst Dragon. Now this is probably a little bit less typical than standard decks where you see cherries being played a lot. Because a few of these are reasonable cherry targets, but there are no cherries in the main or the side, and it looks like he's just played a lot of stuff that you can use for versatile outs to things. A lot of people aren't playing Boral Sword in this kind of deck, or aren't playing Topologic or Triple Burst, and these just give you extra ways to push extra damage, and just deal with opponents more efficiently. Within the side deck we have a triple Mind Control, 1 1-for-1, 1 Jamming Waves, and 1 Hornet Drones. Pretty interesting to have these all involved in the deck. Then a triple Evenly for back row decks, as well as Heavy Storm Duster also for back row decks, and a few others actually. You can bring this in for attacking out your matchup, and then a triple Mind Crush. So that is it for the deck itself. What we'll do now is we'll take a look at the siding strategy then, so how he's implementing these side deck cards. So first off, against Draco, when he's going first, he's putting in the Mind Crushes and the Dusters. They do tend to be searching off, and you can predict what they're going to be having in hand and punish them for adding stuff, basically. And Duster, being able to get rid of multiple back row, normally is not going to affect you too much because they do tend to set the trap, and you can just punish them by hitting Diagram as well. Taking out the Bells, Impermanence, and 1 Protocol there, seems pretty reasonable overall. Going second, he's putting in the Evenlies and the 1-for-1. So the 1-for-1 allowing you to make your Link 2 plays a little more readily, plus you get your Search off for your Melisseek. And then taking out the Bells, which don't really do anything here. 1 Protocol again, and the Judgment. You don't really need the Monster Effect Negate in this kind of matchup. You tend to just sort of push things back into the hand with Silkatus a bit more. Versus Sky Strikers, going first, putting in the Mind Crushes and taking out the Impermanences, just punishing them for making multiple searches off Engage, or putting 2 Engage in the hand. And then going second, putting in Mind Controls, the 1-for-1, the Jamming Waves, and the Drones. You need to get rid of all of their set cards, so that's why the Jamming goes in, and the Drones into the extra deck monsters is an easier way to push through their back row, which is quite good. The Mind Controls taking their extra deck monsters and then turning them into your own is really nice as well, actually. So taking out obviously Judgment, 1 Protocol, Dualities, and 1 Impermanence. You kind of need the opportunity to special summon in order to push through their board, especially given that you've put in 3 Mind Controls which are going to special summon off. The 1-for-1 is going to special. And the Drones specials as well, so you're putting in a bunch of special cards, so you have to get rid of the Dualities. Then for pure Trickstars, going first, he's putting in the Mind Crushes and the Dusters. They will be adding, so you may as well ditch cards out of their hand, and they do have to set stuff up, so Duster again just punishes them there. Taking out the Ogres, the Impermanence, and the Protocol. That seems pretty reasonable. Impermanence doesn't do an awful lot when they can just bounce Candina back to hand. Going second, putting in the Mind Crushers and the Dusters. You can still take their monsters and then use them to beat them down slowly or link away, which is quite cool. And then taking out the Impermanences again, they'll still dodge around it. Judgment because it's too costly, and the two Ghost Ogres not really doing anything there. Then for Trickstar Striker, going first again, Mind Crush and Duster, winning combination, especially against this version of the deck, and then taking out Ogres, Impermanence, and Protocol again. Going second, I believe this is this is an identical lineup for putting in as versus Pure Striker. So you're doing exactly the same kind of thing, but you're taking out the dualities. Judgment, they're taking out 2 Ogres here, I believe, is the thing, because you don't see multi-roll come up in Trickstar Strikers, so you don't have to worry about dealing with that for the grind game. Then against Altergeist, so the mirror match, he's putting in the Mind Crushers, Duster, and 1-for-1 when going first. Getting that search off with 1-for-1 is probably quite crucial in this matchup, where you just build up your advantage a little bit faster than your opponent, so you win out. Obviously taking out Secret Villages, Bell's not doing an awful lot here, and the Ogre's also not doing much here when you're going first. Going second, he's putting in the Evenlies, the 1-for-1, and the Mind Control 1-for-1. Again, it's going to let you get ahead a little bit quicker with your advantage. Mind Control, you can just link off their monsters and evenly just punish them for setting up a board. And similar stuff coming out going second here. Finally, for against Goki, going first, putting in the Mind Crushes, just punish them for actually attempting to play the game and taking away all their resources, and taking out the Impermanences actually. And then going second, you tend to have an interrupt without the Impermanence, so that's probably why. Going second, putting in the Evenlies, and taking out these Secret Villages. He said he sided pretty minimally for Goki because with 10 hand traps in the main, he hopes to stop the combo anyway, and just use the Evenly on their not quite complete board. But he mainly sided this way because Secret Village does nothing going second. So that's it for the siding strategy. Quick summary of the rounds then. So his matchups in order were against Striker, he went 2-1, Pure Invoked, he went 2-0, True Draco Demise, he went 2-1, Sekka BA, he went 2-0, Striker, he went 2-1, Goki, this was Luke Parks, he went 2-1, and finally he went up against Draco Demise and went 2-0, which is really impressive given that that's one of the harder matchups. We'll run through some details of the matches in just a minute, but first I want to go over the things that he's brought up specifically about the deck and the event. So a few things to note: he won 5 of the die rolls at this event and lost 2 of them. The Borrelsword OTK came up twice, so it's really good to see that he did actually include that within the deck. And he said Secret Village was easily the best card within the deck at the event. Anti-Spell and Rivalry are also good cards, but they make you too vulnerable to Trickstar, the Mirror, and to Draco. He's put out a PSA to all Altergeist players: play 3 Desires and 3 Duality. You want to rig your hand as much as possible. There's no reason not to be maxing out on the best consistency cards that you can add in. He says he knows that a lot of people are concerned with the fear of banishing all of your Fakers and your Silcatus of Desires, but it's ridiculously rare, and not being able to search off of Meloseek under Duality is the only time when that's really an issue. But if you play 3 Protocol, then you can offset that anyway, so that's not much of a problem. If you play 4 Altergeist Traps, which is the if you are going to play 4 Altergeist Traps, he says play 3 Protocol and 1 Manifestation. He says he cannot stress enough that what you want is to open good hands as much as possible, and Manifestation is a bad card to open that often contributes to brick hands. He'd rework this side deck as he wants to incorporate 3 Typhoon in there, probably in place of something like Heavy Storm Duster. And then he says that activate Secret Village and also Meloseek happening way too often going second, and he didn't lose any games anytime it happened. Luckily he didn't run into any Trickstar players, but he will probably end up doing so in the next format given that it has not been hit by the ban list, and the exact list that we see here is entirely ban list legal as well. He decided to actually play Altergeist for this event, because if your opponent doesn't side correctly or doesn't draw their side cards, then you'll often have a better matchup against them. The deck can easily main lots of hand traps and has a really great Goki matchup because of it. With the release of Summon Sorceress fairly soon, probably not out until December, and Thunder Dragons coming up in the next couple of months, he's going to stick with Altergeist. They have a great Thunder Dragon matchup, and the hand traps will cover Summon Sorceress abusing decks as well. The hardest matchups for this deck are Trickstar and Draco. Most meta matchups are pretty even, but he built the deck to beat Pure Strikers and Goki, so those aren't bad matchups in his opinion. In doing so, he doesn't play Rivalry or Anti-Spell because they achieve nothing going second, and this particular build has a really good Game 1 matchup with the Mirror as a result. So taking a look at the rounds then in a little more detail. So round 1 against Pure Sky Striker with Ibli, it was a very back and forth game. He won the die roll, and his opponent didn't have an out to Secret Village, so he took Game 1. Game 2 was very back and forth, and the opponent won the grind game, and in Game 3 the opponent bricked, and Ron managed to open all Altergeist cards, including Facus. The engine just put in all of the work and won out there. The opponent evenly matched him for 4 cards, but luckily Ron had spoofing set up, so chained it, kept a set manifestation so that he had 3 Altergeist cards available during the opponent's end phase. Not bad at all. He says it's not really special besides the opponent once excavating Ibli double Ash off an area 0 and not really doing anything there. In round 2, his opponent was a novice invoked artifact player who chose to go second after winning the die roll, but mained artifacts, summons, and other traps, so clearly not quite understanding the concept behind the deck there. After siding, the opponent went second again, but left all the traps in the main deck, so it was a very swift 2-0, the highlight being that Ron managed to use his Ghost Spell in order to negate an invocation, actually. In round 3, Ron's opponent was playing Draco Demise with an extra deck, so he's wary of the potential striker cards or Waking the Dragon being an issue, given that it's been recently quite popular within the UK metagame. He won Game 1 after winning the die roll and dealing with the Draco monsters. Game 2, his hand couldn't deal with Demise, but Game 3 was rather intense. So Ron goes first and sets up a board that has strong responses and summons has strong responses available. And then his opponent summons Maiden with 4 sets and passes back, having dealt with a fair amount of it. Ron elected to summon Melistique off of Faker in the end phase because he knew that he'd have priority to link summon Hextia and have 1 negate at the start of his next turn, so he needed to keep his board of monsters and not use a Silk Bounce. Yeah, he used Spoofing in the standby phase to bait out any spell trap removal, but the opponent doesn't budge. At the start of the main phase, then Ron used Hextia pointing to a Geist. Sets up a Hextia pointing to a Geist, and the following chain ensues because a lot of back row gets flipped. So chaining 1 is Melistique Search, chaining 2 is Maiden response to add a monster, chaining 3 is a permanence on the Mermaid, chaining 4 is Apocalypse, targeting the Maiden to get rid of it, chaining 5 is Hextia to negate the activation of the Apocalypse, and chaining 6 is Skill Drain for the opponent, and chaining 7 is Protocol for Ron. Everything resolves backwards, all the effects go through for Ron, as the opponent's side were all negated, but unfortunately none of the monsters that Ron had available could get over Maiden under Skill Drain because the Hextia does not get the boost at that point. So he had to search another Faker off the chaining 1 that he set up with the Melistique in order to get things going. He summons Conquery from the deck in order to negate Skill Drain, as I assume it negates from hand there, because that's what he's said here. From there on, he ripped apart the opponent's board and set Heavy Stormduster. During the opponent's standby phase, he flipped it to dodge the main phase effects or tributing over them, but he hit Heritage and Waking the Dragon, and the opponent arranged his chainlinks to summon Falcon regardless of the Ash in Ron's hand, and the 2 Hextia negates that were on the board. So the opponent set up the Falcon and then just passed because he wasn't able to do anything. So Ron decided to burn him for 3500 with Bomber Dragon next turn in order to take the game. So really interesting way of actually dealing with everything there, and that massive Chainlink 7 setup for that chain right in the middle of the game as well probably decided everything out there. Round 4 was against Seka BA. Ron says that his hands were pretty busted and the opponents were very underwhelming. Unfortunately for the opponent, this set was not particularly skill-based, as even though the opponent won the die roll, he couldn't actually make Beatrice turn 1. Or he couldn't make Beatrice a single time during the set. There was an Ash on the Sekir in Game 1, and opening evenly multi-Faker in Game 2 made Ron just easily take this opponent out. In round 5, he was against another striker player who lost the die roll. Games 1 and 2, they were very back and forth, and Game 3, the opponent went first, opened Shizuku, set 2 pass with Ray Engrave, and then Ron opened Secret Village, Desires, Mind Control, Silk, and Drones, so he had enough spells engraved to get the extra monster pop off of Jamming Waves, but it wasn't really doing anything, so he pushed for lots of damage as they get close to time, but Ron had no access to Faker, and the opponent used Typhoon on Secret Village in the end phase, recovered and managed to push enough damage for himself. Luckily, Ron drew into access to Faker, so a few turns go by and the opponent can't do enough damage, so Ron managed to win this one in time. An interesting thing was that Ron ended up with a Prime Banshee above a Faker, and the opponent made Hayate and tried to attack straight away to get a draw in time, with the opponent on 6,000, with Ron on 6,000 at this point and the opponent on 4,500, but the opponent didn't declare his phases properly, and he was just rushing through the entire thing, so Ron just really wasn't having it, and told him that at the end of his main phase he'd like to use the Banshee to grab Concrete from the deck and negate the Hayate anyway, at which point the opponent just conceded. Round 6, he was against Luke Parks, as we said, but the set wasn't particularly skillful. Ron won the die roll, and Goki can't really go second versus Altergeist. Game 2, Ron opened double Ash, and that just obviously isn't enough. But game 3, Ron opened, because he had 10 hand traps within the deck, he unfortunately drew all of his normal traps, so he wasn't actually able to just drop a hand trap, so he thought that he would probably lose to Reboot at this point. But luckily for him, Luke didn't actually see it, so he normaled Marionetta, ended with set 5 pass with a trap that he couldn't set within the hand. The opponent, Luke, goes for mid-breaker fields, no responses, and then goes instant fusion, at which point Ron just flipped Imperial Order. And then the opponent starts normal summoning and uses Headbat, but there's a Mind Crush, so that gets rid of everything that could be a problem. Finally, round 7 against Draco Demise in the final. Both of the players actually bricked really hard here and couldn't deal damage, couldn't deal with each other's floodgates on board. The opponent didn't have access to a monster through the Secret Village being around, and Ron couldn't play around Goza match, so all that happened was he actually attacked 10 times with Silcatus, as they both had full hands. In game 2, the opponent made a misplay that cost him the set by using Heritage's extra normal summon instead of just tributing it off, at which point Ron could drop a Ghost Ogre on it, and prevent the opponent from bringing any of the monsters out from his hand full of monsters. From there, he established Secret Village and Faker, and bounced Inspector Border every time that the opponent managed to summon it. So overall, just winning out this round 2-0, I believe. So a really strong looking deck. Very nice to see Altergeist actually winning out at an event with this build, running the Secret Village, which I don't think we've seen many of the topping lists from the UK at least running. And you are running the triple designs and triple dualities, so that extra consistency, that extra ability to set up your hands with actually playable cards is very, very nice to see. Actually, this side deck is really interesting with the mind controls and the sort of Sky Striker setup that you've gone with, and not bothering with cherries, but just enabling yourself to set up a lot of very cool link plays as well. That's really nice to see. So congratulations, Ron. Well deserved first place at the Huddersfield Regional, and hopefully we'll see you again in the future. Thanks for watching this episode of Top Deck. If you have any comments or suggestions that you would like to make, leave them in the comment section down below. Check out the description for details of how you can get involved in this series. You can enter by voice interview, or instead you could just send all of your information over Facebook Messenger. Anything like that will be absolutely fine. If you want to see anything in particular from the upcoming series, then be sure to get in touch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.